All right, welcome back, everyone who is tuning in to our Diabetes 180 Live. If you are watching for the first time, we meet every Monday at 7 p.m. at this hour. Or I shouldn't say this hour, really, it's about 30 minutes, power half hour. And during this time, we discuss what it takes to not only drop your A1C, but to reverse diabetes, okay, with a plant powered diet. So today's topic is going to be the best meal to do that, right? The one of the best meals that you can put together very easily to help you normalize your blood sugars, reduce your A1C, and especially if it's your goal, reverse type 2 diabetes. Of course, as always, ask questions. We keep our chat open. That's the whole purpose of being live, so that we can answer questions about the topic. Also, like to see if there's any questions that can lead to future lives. So if you're watching this live or on the pre-recording, just know that I'll be going through the chat section. Anyone who's watching who's a regular guest, let me know you're here. I always like to greet our regulars. And of course, if you're new, let us know where you're watching from so we can greet you too. All right. I could ask any guesses on what the best meal is for normalizing blood sugar levels, but you probably already have a hint on what the one of the best meals is if you read the description for this live, right? But before I say what it is, anyone who hasn't read the description, who can make a guess, what is the best meal for lowering your blood sugar levels, normalizing your blood sugar levels? Any hint, any guesses? Let us know in the chat. But we're going to not only talk about the best meal and why it is the best meal, but we're also going to go into what I call our meal garden app to find a good recipe, show you how to put it together, and go into a food logging app and teach how to log this food, because this food can be difficult to log if you're a person who's keeping track of your macros. So we're going to do a lot. Hopefully I'm going to do this in 30 to 40 minutes the most. We have a lot to cover. Okay. um, but again, if you have not guessed it, or if you haven't read what that meal is, it's soup. Okay, soup is one of the best meals that you could put together for normalizing blood sugar, or if you're not diabetic and you're just looking to lose weight, improve your overall health. Soup is key. Soup is king. Okay, it's such a staple around the world, and for a lot of reasons. So for diabetes specifically, why soup is highly recommended. So I hope if you don't like soup that you can start try giving it another try, is because it's one of the foods that when you look at epidemiological studies, like studies of populations around the world or large groups of people, that is linked to normal weight, right? So when you look at populations that have normal weight, where they have the lowest rates of obesity, right? They tend to eat more soup than others. So that should tell us something. So cultures and societies where soup is a staple, they tend to be skinnier. Tend to be thinner along the waist. And this actually inspired and hello, Joan. Thanks for joining us from Boston. All right, right. Anyone else who'd like to greet us in the chat? I love that. Um, but yeah, soup has been well known through studies to be very effective for promoting weight loss, for helping us to stay slim. Okay, so even if you're not looking to lose weight, but you're staying slim. Why this is important for diabetes specifically is because we know that one of the key risk factors for developing and also staying diabetic is where you keep your fat, keeping visceral or central adiposity. The more fat we hold in our center area, the stubborn fat that we want to get rid of, right? That can be very hard to burn. It tends to lead to diabetes and diabetes complications, keeping your A1C high. So it just goes without saying, if you can eat in a way that can burn that stubble visceral fat, the fat that's inside our internal organs or sitting around our internal organs, by burning that fat away, eating soup, right? You can normalize your blood sugars, drop your A1C, and get to your diabetes reversal goal. But this is so well known that it actually led to a study. I'm gonna show up right here. I'm actually in the beginning of my slides. Go to the first slide. So in this study, uh, course, which was put on by Campbell Soup, right? Campbell Soup put together a study to compare soup eaters with non-soup eaters across the United States. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's true to say this, but like soup isn't really generally a very popular dish in American society, right? I'm sure it's cold outside. I should also say this: anyone has struggled throughout our winter storms, and prayers are with you. Hopefully, we've seen the worst of it and it's back behind us. But I'm sure a lot of us were locked in, and finding ourselves craving or eating soup. And so, but generally, we don't eat a lot of soup. As far as Americans do, right? I'm Haitian, so I could say we every first of the year we're always eating soup, but even I should say I don't eat as much soup as I would like to. Um, anyone else? So Betty says she loves soup. That's gonna be your next question. Anyone watching can say the contrary, that they eat soup often, that you like eating soup and you eat it often. Let us know. I'm also curious what kind of soup you guys like, right? So I'm gonna talk about one soup that I like to make, and everyone every time I make it or introduce it to people, they tell me that they really enjoy it. So we're gonna share that soup recipe today. But yeah, let me know in the chat what kind of soup you guys like. But this is interesting. In this study, they compared with non-soup consumers. Soup consumers had a lower body weight, and how they did this study is they basically did surveys around across the country to see how frequently or how much they ate soup. So compared with non-consumers, soup consumers had a lower body weight, a lower waist circumference, and a trend towards a lower total energy intake. So you might guess that, okay, well, it's because soup has less calories. And you're right. Soup, when you look at the calorie content of soup, it generally has, as a meal compared to other meals that we sit down to eat, lower calories. But it's more than that. And this is what's interesting when it comes to soup being a great meal for diabetics, is that it's not just number one, a low calorie dish, right? Which we want to have low calorie meals to produce weight loss or maintain healthy weight. But we also know that there's something else about the soup that makes it so beneficial for our health. And that inspired another study where what they did is they compared people on a calorie restricted diet and randomized them to eat 2 servings of soup a day, or two dry snacks like crackers or pretzels with the same number of calories. So you have two groups of people eating the same number of calories, right? And for they did this for 1 year. The group that had those same number of calories in soup form lost 50% more weight. So it can't just be the fact that the soup has less calories, right? Something special about soup makes it so that it can promote weight loss, absent of the fact that it's lower in calories. And one thing that you can say about soup is that it has an opportunity that other meals don't have. Soup gives us a chance to load up on a variety of plant foods, right? And variety is the key. So when you look at how you make soups, I don't know if you guys are just making noodle soups, but you have an opportunity to load it up with legumes and vegetables and even grains or whole grains, right? And having all that in one meal allows you to introduce into your body a variety in one meal that it doesn't typically have. And this is so beneficial because the variety in our meals is so important for overall health, because the more variety you have, the more different types of whole plant foods you eat, the more you're introducing anti-inflammatory components, antioxidant rich components in a mixture, right? That can reduce inflammation, that can boost your immune system, that can improve your digestion, that can spark insulin sensitivity, right? In different ways. And this is where I say that God is amazing in putting food in as our medicine. It's almost like you have an opportunity to fill up on medicine when you eat soup. This is particularly important for diabetics because we know that one key component of food that is great for normalizing our blood sugars is fiber. The thing about soup is, you have an opportunity now to balance high fiber foods with low fiber foods, because not all plants are created equal. All plants have fiber, but some plants have more fiber than others. And we know that fiber can serve as a brake pedal, as we always say, to slow down the digestion, breakdown, and absorption of carbs. So now when you eat soup, if there's a low glycemic food in that meal, the high fiber food in the soup can balance it, right? So it absorbs less quickly and there's a more gentle rise in your blood sugar levels. But there's something, so make sure that's one thing you should kind of take note of. Make sure when you're making your soup, you're including a lot of variety, right? So what's cool is even though we're going to talk about one specific soup recipe, any soup recipe you're making has just throw everything in it, right? Throw everything in your fridge in it, load it up. All right. Um, that's awesome. So Pat says she only drinks soup only when it's cold. You had black beans, veggies, soup. I love it. All right, I'm cool with the canned beans. That's all right. Uh, uh, and we have a comment from Betty also that she drinks soup every day, eats the soup every day, had some for lunch. You included cabbage, zucchini, carrots. I love it. Lentils, load it up. Beans, kale, split peas, man. Well, your soup is even richer than the one I'm going to do. So, but that's what I love about soup. It's an opportunity to literally eat medicine, right? So soup is so important. So if you guys are eating it only in the cold months, winter months, try to eat it more frequently. You know, I would say at least once a week, if not more. All right. But soup has a lot of benefits. And before we go into the recipe, I do want to share, some of its benefits. We talk about this is from a previous live, the different components of food that make these foods good for diabetes. We know that nitrate-rich vegetables are great in that they boost mitochondrial production. And the more healthy mitochondria you have, the more you're able to fight insulin resistance, right? So make sure you're including nitrate-rich vegetables. Those are the dark green leafy vegetables in your soups, right? Like kale. Also, GLP-1 boosting effects. There's different spices and herbs and foods that can boost our hormone GLP-1, the one that we hear all over the news for its weight loss benefits. This can also help us lower our blood sugar levels and a great opportunity to load up on these foods in our soup. So, of course, you could put any of these in soup, maybe not cinnamon, but for sure, onions or kale, cayenne, right? Ginger, so load up on these things in your soup. Another component of soups is legumes, so I definitely encourage putting legumes in your soup. We know, we've talked about in past lives the power of legumes to have what's called a second meal effect when it comes to lowering your blood sugar levels. How many of you have heard of the second meal effect of legumes? So what this basically means is that studies show when you have legumes, let's say for example for dinner, your next meal, even if it's 8 hours later for breakfast, your your blood sugar will be affected by the legumes we ate last night. In other words, that second meal will have a smaller blood sugar spike only because your stomach is still working on the legumes from your previous night. So legumes has a long lasting effect of putting the brakes on the absorption of carbs and making your body sensitive to carbs, boosting your hormones that help us become sensitive to carbs, right? Feeding our gut bacteria. Same thing with cruciferous vegetables in the bottom left. There are very good reasons why these foods are great for diabetes, and you could put them all in your soup. So why not, right? So now let's go into the soup recipe. All right, so let's go into the soup recipe. This is from I guess we call it the Meal Garden app. So one thing that I give my clients access to when they are part of our Diabetes 180 program is recipes. We have actually over 342 recipes right now. And what's nice is there's different ways, of course, you could track your food intake. Well, let me pause this and say this. Let me pause and say this, that, one thing we always recommend doing, okay, before I go even forward, I want to make sure this is clear. If you're looking to improve your blood sugar levels, if you're experiencing spikes in your blood sugar levels, even though you're eating healthy, you're avoiding, refined carbs, you're avoiding processed sugar, you're including plenty of whole fruits and vegetables and legumes, and you're still experiencing spikes. Hopefully you know what I'm going to say, right? I've been saying it every week for the past 3 years. Watch your fat intake. You want to keep your fat intake low. The only way to know that you're keeping your fat intake low is to track it in food logging apps. So when you're tracking a meal like soup, it can be kind of hard because you're like, well, how many servings of this soup am I eating? How many servings of carrots in this soup am I eating? You're not gonna put every ingredient of the soup right in that app and figure out what the serving size of every ingredient was. That's too much. What I'm going to show you to do is very simple. You're going to basically make one recipe that you put inside these apps and allow the app to dish out the serving size. Now, that being said, there is some heavy lifting. You got to do some work. So let's say you're deciding to go with a soup recipe that, like, if Betty is putting together a soup and she's putting all the ingredients she mentioned, right? She does has to have to then proportion out that pot into containers or where she can weigh them out. If you want to be very specific, you're going to weigh each container to say, okay, well, this pot of soup made 6 containers of soup and each soup contains so many grams. You don't need to go by weight. You could just go by size volume. So, I know that this pot, I can separate it into, I don't know, 8 cups of soup. So the first time, I'm not going to lie, there's going to be some work involved. Okay. Cause you got to actually uh, figure out how many servings of soup are in that pot. Okay. One thing you can do is use recipes or, find a similar recipe to what you're using. What we're going to do is use a recipe and then we're going to allow the recipe to determine the serving size. And from there, we know, how to enter into the app. So I'll show you how to do this here. All right. Antoinette, thank you for joining us. All right. You're never too late. And of course, we always have this available for replay. So we're going back. Well, let me make sure you guys are seeing my screen here. If you guys aren't seeing this, let me know, but you should be seeing our recipes here in our meal garden. All these are all low fat and already perfected for diabetes, management or reversal. But we're going specific favorite kale, chickpea, and sweet potato soup. An excellent combination when it comes to soup, if I say so myself, right? So what's nice is that you just take the recipes ingredients and you put them inside an app. So the whatever it calls for, you're going to put it inside. You're going to basically create a recipe for it. So what we're going to be using is this app called Chronometer, right? Has anyone used Chronometer? Let me know in the chat. What apps are you actually using to log your food, if you're logging at all? I'm definitely always curious to see what people are using. But yeah, Chronometer is awesome. I used to use Lose It. Now we're using Chronometer. They're both good. I would say any food log has its advantages and disadvantages. But this what most food logs have is an opportunity to create recipes. So, well, let me show you first. So if you're using an app like Chronometer, you can import recipes just by putting in the website URL right here, and that will create the recipe. Or you can copy and paste the ingredients. So let's say, I know the ingredients, I can copy and paste them right here. And then paste the ingredients, and then that will create the recipe. We're gonna do it old school. We're just gonna create a recipe by looking at our ingredients list. So I have my ingredients here. Okay, I'm gonna name the recipe. Uh, let's see, kale and chickpea sweet potato soup. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna name it here. And it's really simple. All you do is add the ingredients, right? And save the changes. So I'm going to go ahead and add my ingredients, looking up each one. What's nice is you actually can star or favorite ingredients here if you know that you use them often. So I know I'm going to put kale in my soup, and I'm going to put 1 cup of kale in there. You could put 2, and you could change the serving size based on how much you're putting, right? So this is a moderate size soup. It's not a very big soup, okay? But of course, you could always double the ingredients if you wanted to put more than what it costs for. I'm going to put an onion in there, okay? And I'll use let's say one medium onion. All right. And what else I'm going to put in here? I'm going to put, let's see, celery. So where is celery? Here. And let's say we'll do 2 stalks of celery. Let's say we're going to use medium-sized celery. Okay. And what else does this call for? Sweet potato. We're going to add our sweet potato. Sweet potato is especially nice for diabetes because some of us, when we eat potatoes, we aren't uh, sensitive enough to insulin to tolerate white potatoes, but many of us can tolerate sweet potatoes because sweet potatoes are lower on the glycemic level, so they have a less likely to spike your blood sugar. So since I don't see it as a starred, let's see. I don't think I've actually favorited sweet potato, so I'm gonna find it here. All right, and just find sweet potato. I'm looking for sweet potato raw. Yep, here, and then I'm a favorite this time so that it'll always be available. I find it easier. And let's say we're using 2 medium-sized potatoes. Again, I could always double the recipe if I want to make more. And then, of course, your chickpeas. So I'm going to add my can of chickpeas. All right, I'm with you, Betty. I like to be quick, so often use canned legumes, canned beans. All right, and my recipes. If you guys are making comments or asking questions, I can't see them right now because I'm on a different screen. But let me make sure you guys, please let me know if anyone cannot see what we're showing in the chat. Okay. All right. Some people are saying they never use Chronometer. Yeah, definitely. I believe they have a free version. That's one thing that's kind of tricky, is like finding meal logging apps that aren't trying to charge you or take your money. Most of them will have a free version. They're just going to keep on asking you to pay. Just You can get everything you need for free. Just tracking. If you're just looking to track your fat intake, you don't need to pay for apps. Okay. So looking for chickpeas canned, and let's see if I could find it. Probably in about, yeah, garbanzo beans canned, low sodium preferable, right? And we're going to use a can. I'm not sure why. So this is one thing that's kind of interesting. Sometimes you don't see the ounce, like a 1 can as an option. So you have to figure out, well, how much ounces is in a can. Some um, options sometimes will give you a can as an option. So you have to figure out what is a can, how much is a can. So this one does allow us to use 1 can, which we'll use that in our recipe. All right, 1 can of chickpeas, drained, no salt, which is probably going to be the biggest contributor to calories, and the most filling part of our meal. So 1 can of chickpeas. And what else am I missing? Oh, the vegetable broth. Lastly, we'll include our vegetable broth. All right, and you could use water. So vegetable broth or water, preferably low sodium, right? So we're gonna put, let's say, I think the recipe calls for something like 8 cups, since that's the bulk of our soup. And we add the last ingredient. The rest are spices, so salt, or you season it. Spices or seasonings don't contribute to calories, so that you don't really need to include them in your recipe. But this is it. So once I've created my recipe, I can kind of review it to make sure all the ingredients are there. Then I determine the serving size. So this is, unless I'm eating the whole pot. If the whole pot is 1 serving, then good on you if you can eat all that. But let's say the whole pot is 6 servings or something like that. Okay. So the app is going to divide your serving sizes, right? So in 1 serving, look at that. 1 serving, 117 calories. That's crazy, right? Of course, even if I doubled it, if I doubled the recipe, and ate 2 servings, that's still pretty good, right? Very low saturated fat, total fat very low. That's what we're looking for. This is a diabetes reversing meal, right? It gets a diabetes Wendy seal of approval. Look at all those vitamins and minerals, right? So that's the nutrition facts you've created simply by entering these ingredients, right? Preferably, you want to use ones that have a international database symbol. That means that it's been vetted, to be accurate. Then now what I do is simply save my new recipe. I hit save, and then I add it to my diary. All right. If I use it often, I might go ahead and star it. So I have a whole pot of soup, right? And then this is the full recipe. If I think about this, this is crazy. If you ate a whole pot of soup, right? With all these ingredients, 2 carrots, 2 celery, a whole can of chickpeas, two sweet potatoes, a whole onion, you've only eaten 700 calories, you know? Think about how full you are and having just 700 calories of food, right? Our fat intake is low, but we're not gonna be greedy here. We're gonna let's say I started the day with this meal, and I my serving size now is I had 1 serving of this soup. Okay, um, let's say two, because I'm a pretty good guy. I'm a big guy. I'm gonna probably eat at least two bowls. And so I added it to my diary. The next thing to do, and when we use this program and for our clients, we teach them how to use it, but it's pretty easy to use. You click on diary here, and it will tell you the breakdown of fat percentage. So if you're looking at this circle here, right, and this is what you want to pay attention to, how much fat is in the meal is going to tell you how insulin sensitizing this meal is. Less fat, less total fat, the more insulin sensitizing it is, right? The more it is to in a more its ability to in the long run lower our A1C, lower our blood sugar levels, right? So this meal just has 12%. If you look at the far right corner, 12% fat in this total serving of soup, right? And get it has plenty. Also, I forgot to mention this. If you looked at the recipe, let's see if I go back. The fiber content, man, look at this. 27 grams of fiber. Okay, that's in the full recipe, of course, but um, let's say there should be a way to look at the nutrition facts by just serving size, but that's a lot of fiber, right? So that's a lot of fiber, and this is what we're looking for. If you think about this, consider this, guys, that daily recommendations for fiber are to eat at least 30 to 40 grams, preferably I say 45 grams of fiber a day. In this meal, you're probably getting 10 grams or 15 probably, if you're eating two bowls or something like that. That most people probably are getting 15 grams in their whole day of fiber. This one meal can get you at least 15, maybe 20 grams of fiber, right? In just one sitting. So the great way to make sure we're eating to promote healthy weight, normalizing our blood sugar levels, improving our gut microbiome, which needs fiber to survive and thrive. All right. So let me actually pause and look at some of these comments. So let's see. Audrey says, I'm going to eat until I am full. I love it. That's the point, right? You want to eat till you're full. What's nice about soup is that you're eating till you're physically full, but you're going to be very calorically poor. There's going to be less calories than your fullness actually demonstrates. So this is a great way to make sure you're eating very low calorie density and emphasizing the expansion of food. That's probably one reason why soup is such a filling or weight loss promoting meal, is because the soup, the water content in that meal is adding to your satiety, right? It's making you feel full a lot quicker, right, than you would be calorically full. Right, so your calories are low, even though you feel like you ate a very filling meal, right? So soup, man. I hope if I haven't made anyone a soup believer, hopefully I did tonight. But if we're going back to the app here, let's see. Yeah, and we're looking at the Chronometer app. This is something that we all can use, right? I hope that you guys can start using this if you're not already to track your food intake. Let me go back to the diary. And so every day, every meal you put in, it's going to tell you how it affects your fat intake. And this is the key. If we're eating to reverse diabetes, for type 2 diabetics specifically, we're trying our best to keep our fat intake at 15% or lower. Or another goal is 30 grams for the whole day, right? For or 10 grams per meal if you have a if you have to look at grams of fat intake, looking at no more than 30 grams. So make sure your this can be confusing too when you're looking at this app. It gives you energy targets. So this is only if you actually set a target. If you haven't set a target, then I would ignore this part of the screen and just focus on the calories consumed because that's all that matters, okay? Is the calories consumed. Um, if you look at, let's see, something else. Okay, if you're trying to see where your most of your fat is coming from, like we said, your top sources, you could click on the fat target. If you you could actually set a fat target of, let's say, your daily carb target is 30 grams. It's going to tell you which foods are causing the highest fat intake. Of course, there's only one recipe, but if you look at the recipe, it gives you a breakdown of the percentage of fat in particular food, right? And I should say this, we're not trying to say that fat is a villain here. We're not going for no fat, we're going for low fat. That's the idea. Not no fat. We need fat, we need healthy fats, but keeping our fat low will make sure we're sensitive to insulin and in the long run seeing our blood sugars normalize. All right. So I think that's all I had for the night. I think that I accomplished the agenda. My agenda was to convince you to eat more soup. Okay, so did I do that? I hope I did that. I convinced everyone to start eating more soup, and to track their food intake with food logs, and not to be afraid of using soup in these food logs. You can create recipes and actually have the app help you customize the serving sizes, right? To determine every time you eat that soup how much fat, how much carbs, how much protein, how much fiber was in that meal. All right. All right. So that's basically all we got for you tonight. One thing I will end on is this: we're always inviting people who need more support to get the support they need, and in even if it's just through one of our free consultations. So I always invite people to look at the description section of every one of our lives. We'll always have a link that you can use to schedule to talk with me and tell me where you're stuck. If you're doing everything you feel you need to do, or maybe you're just struggling with the motivation part, right? You need someone to help you stay accountable to yourself, right? And make better decisions. Then maybe coaching will be something that will help turn things around for you. Look at the free consultation in our description section. Schedule a call, and you could be one of our Diabetes 180 members to receive the accountability, the structured, a personalized guided support that you'll need to get you to your goals. All right. So, as always, beloved, I pray above all things that you may prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. We'll see you next week on Monday's Live.